Welcome back to the show. Today, the underclassmen take center stage in the Canadian class of 2020 and 2021. Let's take a quick recap and discuss the headliners in 2018, RJ Barrett and Simi Shitu. And as we go to 2019, headlining that class is AJ Lawson and Tyrese Samuel. Now, as we look at 2020, we have a situation where it's actually a non-Canadian competing in Canada. Similarly to Thon Maker, his younger cousin Makur Maker has taken the top spot in the class of 2020. Elias, why has he taken that spot? And he's a kid that is very similar to Thon Maker, his older cousin, where he came from the States, originally from Australia, and now he's just competing within this landscape.
Yeah, I mean, we look at this class, and originally it was Addison Patterson and Cashius McNeilly who were arguably the top two spots. Now with Makur in the mix, I think it's pretty undisputed based off of the size and the long-term potential at the NBA level with a kid like this. At 6'11", the versatility on the perimeter and the fact that he's not developing to play college ball. He's developing to play pro ball. And Makur is actually ahead of where Thon was at this age. That's what makes him special, and I think makes him an undeniable number one spot in 2020.
And you walk into the gym, there's no disputing what he is as far as a physical specimen. And not many guys in the world with that, like as you mentioned, that length, that size, and that athleticism with a developing skill set. The second and third spots belong to the aforementioned Addison Patterson and Cashius McNeilly. Very interchangeable, still more to prove, as much as these kids do in the class of 2020. Addison Patterson, a kid that's been among the upper echelon and has had the top spot, since he was 7th, 8th grade as far as his physical advancements, and now we're seeing the rest of the class starting to grow physically and catch up physically. But what separates Addison Patterson from the rest of the class?
Well, I think the size for position. He now stands at 6'7" and is a scoring guard. He can be played as a 2 or a 3. He's very versatile in his scoring ability. He could start from the perimeter, usually operates from the 45 angles when he starts his penetration, and I think that is what allows him to see the floor extremely well. Once he gets two defenders to collapse on him, he has the vision and is unselfish enough to make the right reads, make the right pass. Now, I think I've seen him listed in some places as a point guard. I don't think that his long-term position is as a point guard because his knack for scoring is so good. You wanna embrace your natural abilities. But that I think is what separates him. He's an elite level scorer, and now that his athleticism is really starting to take mold, we're looking at a pretty scary threat on the floor. Now add the defensive side to his game. If he can combine a full game or multiple full games playing offense and defense at the same level, that is a true force to be reckoned with.
Now, it's really interesting watching him in the preseason a little bit. For the first time, he's not the top dog on his team. He looks to his right, he sees Luguentz Dort, physical specimen, mental toughness, and I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic as he continues to develop, and that can only make him better. We look at Cashius, a 6'5" combo guard. Play him at the 1, you play him at the 2. He's a guy that has been playing in a little different situation than Addison. He's been playing up for a while. I remember watching him as a 9th grader playing up on the AAU circuit with 12th graders, seniors, Thon Maker, Justin Jackson on that Canada Elite team.
Yeah, but no, and Cashius has had the national team experience. Again, like you said, he's played with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, right before he graduated and had his last AAU season, and he never looks out of place. That's the beauty of his game. His IQ, his mentality is at a much higher level than a lot of the other players in the 2020 class, and the game comes to him easily. He has feel. He has a good understanding of where everybody is on the floor. His peripherals are in check. I think Cashius is in a position right now where he is the top point guard, but there are guys coming after him.
No question.
And, one name that I want to bring up who's actually in this top 5 is Okai Jamgos from Oakville, Ontario. He's somebody who is completely under the radar. I don't even think the national team, he didn't even get an invite to the national team camp, but he's somebody that's got to be on that radar. also stands at 6'4", elite shooter. Now, we can't just throw the word elite around. I'm talking about a guy that makes, 15, 16 out of 20. Okai Jamgos is the type of player who's already a threat from the perimeter using his three-point shot. But now you add the fact that he is a big-time ball handler as well, and he's about to lead LBA with, Jalen Warren graduated and moved on. He's in position now as a point guard to have a true effect on this team right from the jump.
Now, I know you're very high on Okai. Heard great reviews. I've seen it myself. No question, highly skilled. But a lot of these guys have a lot to prove. If you look at the junior national team, potential team, I should say, for next summer, you're looking at these guys that would be considered playing up with the 2019 class. You look at Addison and Cashius having a good chance to play for this team. And Okai, if he does if he is who you and we think he is, he's gonna make a statement pretty quickly. And then another guy that's right there, Joshua Hemmings, 6'8", 6'9", at Oak Hill. He's a kid. We've talked about upside for years with him, and it seems that he's grown a little bit. But what I want to know about is where's his skill set at, and what do you see him as long term in terms of position?
Josh Hemmings is stands at 6'8", and we got to see him a lot during the AAU circuit this past summer. He is a player that is ultimately going to play the three position. I think he brings a great deal of he's like a Swiss Army knife. Let's call him that. He could shoot from the three-point line. He could put it on the deck and create. He can absorb contact on the attack as well. At Oak Hill, he's going to be tested, and that is a very good test for him, considering that Oak Hill is a dominant American program that plays a great national schedule. He's going to be around players that are being recruited at the high major level, and so is he now. He's got a couple offers from Cincinnati and elsewhere. He's a guy who will be, he could essentially move up to number one. I would not be surprised, based off of how his year goes.
I'm not ready to go there, only because he hasn't had an opportunity to yet lead a team at a high level. He was a younger guy at Oak Hill last year, and I'm assuming he's gonna get more minutes this year. So I think that mental piece, the confidence piece, is a huge part of the development. But nonetheless, we'll keep tabs on that.
I just feel like when you put all of these guys in the same gym, that is what's going to give the true indication of who's who. The cream always rises to the top. Now this is like the national team camp that we were just at. It's like I had an epiphany there. It was the first time in Canadian basketball history that the politics got thrown out of the window, and all of the top guys were in the gym at the same time. Now, once we get them competing on a more consistent basis in that environment, that is what's going to truly tell us the who's who.
No question. And if we look at, guys that aren't necessarily at that level on that type of radar, Trayvon Minot, I need to mention.
Yeah.
I need to mention Trayvon Minot. 6'10". We call him the Jaden Bediako of Quebec. Ferocious, long, plays for Saint Laurent Express. He's also about to have a big year in the NPA. And dunks everything around the rim, ferocious and really aggressive in his approach. Another two guys I want to mention is Coleman Stuck and Luka Sakota, both for playing for the King's Christian program. Kudos to Coach Z, doing a fantastic job out of Burlington. Here's a guy, Coleman Stuck, who's rising very quickly. We've seen him early this season, what he can do at 6'7", 6'8", lights out shooter, lights out. And Luka Sakota, a guy that 6'4", point guard, high skill set, high IQ.
Yeah, and I'll start with Trayvon Minot. I got to see a lot of him over the past 2.5 years at Saint Laurent tournaments in Montreal, and he's been a guy who's kind of just been on an escalator. Now, you mentioned the Jaden Bediako comparison. I feel like where he is at this age, he's actually ahead of where Jaden was. And kudos to Jaden, don't get me wrong. He's breaking out of his shell now.
I think they're different.
In what sense?
I think mentally they're different. I think Jaden has been, over the years, gaining more confidence, getting the ball, getting more touches.
Absolutely.
Whereas Trayvon's motor is what separates him. Like, he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective and be productive on the floor.
Now, you mentioned, Jaden mentally has just been activated, and he's a year older. His skill set, his feel around the rim, his aggressiveness, the way he finishes through contact, the way he goes up and under, his drop steps. He's much more ahead of where Jaden was, and that's no disrespect to Bediako.
I think Bediako's more skilled than Trayvon.
I would disagree on that.
How so? Trayvon.
We got to get these guys in the same gym.
Bediako's skill set is what has been consistent throughout the years, whereas Trayvon Minot, his motor separates them. So you put both those guys together and fuse them, and you have an ideal big man. Well, you have that ferocity with the skill set and the feel and the touch.
So let's look at this national team that's being assembled for next summer. First, history in the making again. We're getting the FIBA Americas on Canadian turf in St. Catharines, Ontario. It is a travesty if Trayvon Minot is not identified throughout the regular high school season so that he can be at camp, because this is what's going to be beautiful about it. Trayvon Minot and Jaden Bediako in the same gym competing against each other are going to get each other better, bar none. Iron sharpens iron, as we always like to say. They need this guy in the gym.
We can't forget about Big Ben Hendricks. We can't forget about Malachi Ndur. We do have some other bigs, but none.
I don't consider Malachi Ndur a big, by the way.
6'8", led the national team in rebounding in his last goal.
That's having a knack for rebounding.
Right.
But I see him as a forward at the next level.
Sure, but I'm saying in terms of size, to your point, Trayvon Minot, there's nobody like him other than Jaden as a true big. We'll leave that right there for the class of 2020, and let's transition to the class of 2021. Now, these underclassmen, age groups. It's you never know what it's gonna look like 6 months, 3 months down the road, let alone 6 months down the road, and then a year down the road. As far as physical, mental development, as they continue to develop their skills, extremely important. Does not matter where you're ranked. At this point, it's just about continue to get better. And that's the case not just as underclassmen, that's period. No matter where you're ranked, you need to get better and better, and the rankings will take care of themselves. Muon Reath. Out of Ottawa, Ontario. The nation's capital. I've said this publicly, Elias. It's been slept on for years. And Muon Reath, like that Mariel Shayok prior to him, Eddie Ekior, guys that there's been names that I could go on forever. About names out of Ottawa. Muon Reath, to me, is the number one player in this country right now, based on upside and based on I'm very confident in their development model over there. Playing at Canada Top Flight Academy, another big name coming in the NPA, 6'7", and has grown. It's looking like he could potentially get to 6'9". He fits that Kevin Durant mold as far as his agility, his length, and his developing skill set.
Well, it's nice to agree on some things once in a while with you. I do feel like that.
When I'm right, of course,
that Kevin Durant mold is suitable for him, and he just had a 3-inch growth spurt over the summer. He now stands at 6'7". He can handle the ball. He's proven and tested against his own age group, and kind of got a feel for things in the NPA last year. But this year, as a national champion, people are coming after you guys. I'm speaking on Canada Top Flights as a whole. Now, Muon is one of those guys who's going to help carry the torch. He's going to be looked at as an offensive threat at all times.
And defensive.
Absolutely. He takes away a lot of angles with that length. When he opens up and he sinks his base and gets
very nimble as well off his feet.
Absolutely. So, with a guy like him, matched with Lualacott on his side, Kaleem Sarazin, other guys like that, Muon Reath is going to make some serious noise this year.
The upside in this class, Elias, is interesting because you have several guys at the top that fit the same profile. 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", still growing with a lot of length, bouncy, agile, nimble off the floor. And guys like Cordell Charles out of Toronto and George Lefebvre out of Montreal fit that mold, similar to Muon Reath.
Yeah, and with Cordell Charles, we're seeing him break out of his timid shell, and we're starting to see him learn about who he is as a player. Super high character kid. He's the nicest kid to talk to. On the floor, now I want to see him just, unleash a little bit, and I think it's starting to come. He's starting to fill up his lanes. He's starting to, to get out in transition, to really push with some pace. I'm excited about what Cordell is going to look like after this year because he plays on a very young team with Bill Crothers, where he now has an opportunity to be the man on the squad. So Cordell, I think by the end of the season, we're looking at guys like him, guys like Georges Lefebvre. Georges stands at 6'8". I think he's, from the bigs, he's a little bit ahead because he's always had the mechanics. You know, with some 6'8" guys, you look at them, and 6'8" at this age, I mean, you look at them and they look like baby giraffes that just came out of the womb, and they're kind of just, you know, learning how to move.
George got that fluidity to him.
Absolutely. The mobility's always been there. The ball hand-eye coordination has always been there. So these two are both very interesting prospects. And Lefebvre is going to be in North Carolina this year, being tested in one of the biggest hotbeds in America. So looking forward to seeing how he progresses.
Lefebvre, I look at him as developing as that combo forward. Will be multi-dimensional and play multiple positions, but that combo forward ultimately is where I see him. And let's just look at a different position here. We're looking at a 6'3" point guard in Kayvon Marshall, a guy that Antwi Atuaini, one of our colleagues, former Arizona State alum, referred to as young James Harden. You know, a 6'3" point guard in Marshall, but also that statement coming from a 6'3" point guard that played with Harden.
You know, Twee's a wise man. He sees into the future. You know, having played with Harden, I mean, he's got the most credibility to speak on that. The fact that he would mention something like that is very interesting, and I do see what he's talking about. Kayvon Marshall is a guy who steps on the floor in almost every game, nears a triple-double. He rebounds. He's not only aggressive going at rebounds, but he has a knack for it. He knows where to be on the floor in order to secure a possession and then bust out the other way. He can score from the three-point line. He can finish in transition above the rim, and he's super unselfish.
He's a guy that, as he's grown over the last year, he went from a just straight scorer and now has become more of a playmaker, looking for teammates because he's always gonna draw attention every time he hits the floor.
And you know what? I want to credit someone for a part of his development, and I know Kayvon would as well. Coach Dash has been coaching at Grassroots and been with this age group for a very long time. He's helped him add something to his game progressively on a year-by-year basis. And I think that, you know, looking at this class here, it's the guys that constantly add something to the game that, you know, usually elevate. In the previous class, we just talked about Okai Jambos, went from being a spot-up shooter that, you know, ran the Nick Stauskas route from Michigan to now being a ball handler that's being a PG. You're seeing the same thing with Kayvon Marshall.
We're going to look at another point guard here at the 5th spot in Kyle Duke. We watched him last year with St. Mike's. He's got a bag of tricks, able to really do a lot on the floor as far as playmaking goes. Sees the plays, he's a step ahead of plays usually, and can really create for himself and others. With regards to Kyle Duke, tell me a little bit how do they differ and how are they alike with regards to point guards? Because we're looking at Kayvon Marshall as a point guard, Kyle Duke as a point guard. The rest of those guys, you know, they can fluctuate from, you know, 1 to 5.
Yeah, and I think for the rest of those guys, it really depends on how they label their strengths and whether they choose to continue expanding on their game or master certain attributes of the game. Now with Kyle Duke, he's different from Kayvon Marshall in the fact that he's a score-first point guard, I find. Marshall is just a basketball player. He's a bona fide baller. Duke, very good at creating space, very good at breakdown, very good at getting to the rim, but he's going to be challenged when he's around playing against older, bigger, longer, stronger competition. So we're seeing him transition and make turning into I saw him be a point guard, and then I saw him transition to more of a shooting guard. I'm going to call Kyle a combo at this point. Uses the Euro step effectively, can get to the rim, can separate, can really do a good job separating space between him and the defender.
You don't look at him as just a full-time point guard?
No, not yet. There's certain attributes of his game. Although he's an on-target passer, I think the point guard, because the position has evolved, I'm looking at him as more of a combo because that score-first mentality.
He's a straight point guard. We watched him run the show at St. Mike's against older competition for a whole season.
Right, and there was a lot of deficiencies I found.
I mean, of course, there's deficiencies. He's a young guy on the come up, but you put him around guys, and I've watched him on the AU circuit as well. You put him around guys that can score and do things. He can now distribute a little bit more. And I've seen, maybe because you haven't seen him in that type of environment, I can see how I can't see it at all. He's a straight point guard. He's a straight playmaker. And before we kind of round up this class, we want to look at a couple of not big names yet, but some bigs, some size. Javonte Brown, we actually haven't got a true evaluation on him yet, but we can't deny him at 6'10". We saw him in some preseason action with Thornley. He was on the bench, but I'm really looking forward to learn more about this kid at 6'10". It looks like an athlete. And then a guy we have seen is Charles Bediako, younger brother of Jaden Bediako. Very different than Jaden in terms of his agility and his speed. Not really a stocky guy, but a very mobile guy. And he's got a ton of upside at 6'8", 6'9". Very athletic, very ferocious around the rim. And again, similar to you and I, it's complete opposites as brothers, it seems. Maybe not from a personality standpoint, but definitely on the floor. Yeah,
from a physical standpoint as well. Jaden, a lot more girth on him from a very young age. Had a more stronger base, whereas you look at Charles and he's more of a slinky, more of a wiry type of prospect. And it's been beneficial for him on the defensive end and from a rebounding standpoint. He rebounds in bunches. He's quick to get up for that second jump. Those fast twitch muscles are activated. He blocks and alters a lot of shots. So I'm not sure what kind of offensive threat he is yet, if at all. But he's definitely a guy that can, earn a position on a team as a specialist. Now, obviously, offensively, he's 2021 class. They're all going to grow. But what he is right now is a big-time rebounder and a big-time shot blocker.
That will wrap up the national player rankings. We'll be on the scene from coast to coast, tracking the top Canadian basketball prospects in the country, and be on the lookout for the next drop coming this spring.